Good morning, everybody. Yeah, guys here excited to learn about the hybrid cloud, or what that means, what it's going to offer? Yeah? All right, cool. Sounds good. So, go ahead and switch this over and we'll get started. All right, so today's session, watching the clouds, dealing with challenges with monitoring hybrid cloud environments. It's going to be a section later for Q&A. We'll make sure to save some time for it, and kind of a small group. So if you want to come up a little bit closer too, we're going to be working through a lot of different demos, so feel free.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to cover anything that's not already GA or launched, but just be aware anything that we may talk about in that regard, just take it with a grain of salt. Could change by the time it does finally go public. So.
Yeah. So who are we? My name is Craig Lee. I'm the Chief Systems Architect at Blue Medora.
And I'm John Diaz. I'm a Senior Technical Marketing Manager with the Cloud Business Unit at VMware.
So what are we talking about today? So first off, we're going to talk about why hybrid cloud, and really that's important to define the objective-based approach in monitoring. You've got to really understand what you're trying to get out of the cloud to actually monitor it. So we're going to be dealing with some challenge scenarios and talking about how your current skill set applies to the hybrid cloud overall, in planning, migration, workload costing and optimization, overall health and availability and SLAs, and then really doing that deep dive into performance as well. So you can look at your database workloads, for example, within on-prem and off-prem. We'll also wrapping up with some Q&A and some resources so you guys can take this home with you and expand the conversation further. So why hybrid cloud? We're taking an objective drive into monitoring and how we're doing this. This is one of my favorite comics. So, Daddy, what are clouds made of? So, Linux servers. When you're defining the cloud, a lot of people just think this cloud is this nebulous resource, but at the end of the day, it's still infrastructure, and
right.
There's still databases, there's still storage, networking, and everything else involved there. And it's just good news for us. A lot of our current skill set and tooling really applies. It's just going to be living somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, so some of the data that we've seen that's guiding a lot of what VMware strategy is in Blue Medora, as well as the public cloud push that a lot of customers are exhibiting. And just by show of hands, I assume there's some interest in the room for public cloud is the reason you're here, but who is currently operating in a hybrid cloud model today? Is anyone? A few of you? Okay. Yeah, so that's becoming more and more common. It's kind of the de facto way that organizations are managing their IT. So you can see we're projecting a lot of growth in that area. And what we want to make sure that we enable our customers, as Craig mentioned, is to be able to manage that with kind of the same tooling, the same skill sets. So you don't have to do a lot of hand wringing over how do I manage this in this new paradigm. So. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about the hybrid cloud drivers. So why did you go and why did you evaluate hybrid cloud in the first place? What are some of the benefits here and what that really means for you? So with the theme of SLAs, uptime, and ensuring performance for production applications, we in IT classically have had this figured out. There's a whole suite of tools. There's an industry already built around this. We have hardware and DR sites and complicated SANs and UPSs and all that. An entire industry devoted to this. So everything's solid and good, except for within that world it may take a month to provision a VM or 2 weeks. And with that, no matter what, IT is still accountable for uptime. Everybody is always looking for that single throat to choke, if you will. And within that world, you have the rise of shadow IT. So you have a lot of SaaS-based, perhaps things that your developers are using or different tools there. And really what that's showing is a decoupling between the business needs and what IT is able to provide. What is the overall speed of that? So with that, people are really viewing IT as the gatekeeper instead of enabling the actual business line. So that's not great for us, right? But we can move forward here. So looking at the hybrid cloud, a lot of themes where agility is the center of focus. So being responsive to the business needs overall, and you're starting to see the rise in DevOps methodologies. So it's just in reaction to that. And a lot of great services such as the VMware Cloud or AWS or Azure that can really allow us to become even more responsive. Within that world, there's less emphasis on the operating system, there's less emphasis on the virtual machine, and the applications and services are really front and center. We talk about these microservices architecture. and within cloud hosting allows us to move quickly within that. But in my mind, if you're able to increase agility, this is the way that we can counter shadow IT, because we're able to move at the speed of business and have that agility. So one of the other huge drivers, and really the major disruptor and kind of how we're thinking long-term within this hybrid cloud world, is within the theme of capacity. So things are shifting where things are on demand, things are provisioned at the swipe of a credit card and the click of a button now. It's really changing the way we look at things overall. And it's a shift, and a lot of our chief revenue officers or chief operating officers are kind of asking us, moving from that CapEx investment model to OpEx model. So with that, you get minimal risk. What I mean by that, minimal risk and failure for the business, where if the company wants to spin up a new division or some kind of online service, they don't have to buy a SAN, they don't have to buy a hyperconverged infrastructure or anything else with that. They could just swipe a credit card, and if it does fail, you don't have all that investment of hardware just kind of sitting around. So it is a real enabler for that particular factor of business. So when we're talking about monitoring all this, which is really what our central theme is, you got to look at why. Why did you go to the cloud in the first place? And really, what is your driving factor here? And from that, start to tailor what your overall focus is and what you're looking at from the availability and capacity standpoint. So look at your business goals. Is it agility? Are you trying to counter a shadow IT? Are you trying to move faster because your developers are just going crazy and working with a Pivotal Cloud or Azure, and you can't really put any kind of controls on that? Is it from a capacity perspective, where you're looking at moving over to OpEx and you want to move quickly or try out some different business ventures? Perhaps it's global availability too. This is a great thing that it really offers, especially in the small and medium business space, where maybe everything is in North America today, but you would like better performance for your customers across the world. Well, now you can do that with VMC and the different availability zones, and AWS and the different availability zones, just to name a couple examples, where you can move something from US East over to the APAC region quickly with just a press of a button and swipe of a credit card. So with these new problems, you need some new solutions, and you really don't want tool sprawl. So ideally, you want some tool sets and some methodologies that are similar in a way to what you currently have, and you don't want to keep spreading everything across your organization.
And I think too, you also want to take advantage of lessons learned in the past. So, all of us have come up through the years of virtualization and trying to manage that and how that presented some challenges, in addition to the great benefits we got out of that. I think the story's a little similar here. So we just want to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past as we move into public cloud.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah. And so one of the things that is a big driver that we hear from customers is costing. There's oftentimes IT gets the message that, hey, IT is expensive. It's cheaper maybe to go to public cloud for certain applications. And that may or may not be true. But what is really lacking is that visibility in the private cloud space, and comparatively what public cloud costs. So you can't really make intelligent decisions about what the cost benefit is without this baseline information. So vRealize Business for Cloud gives you that capability. It works with all the tooling that we'll look at today. We'll do some demonstrations of what you can see here. But it really enables IT to become more of a business partner and a service provider, instead of just that drain cost center within the business. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then along with that, vRealize Operations gives the capability to have a broad view of all your environments, whether they're in the private cloud, the public cloud. Make it very simple and easy to consume. Full stack visibility with that, and then the extensibility that we have through management packs that can be acquired from a partner, Blue Medora, to add more value to that, to look at applications that are running on-prem or in the public cloud. So you really get that full, broad visibility from a single pane of glass.
So as John had mentioned, there are some extensions, and this is what Blumador provides, what we're looking at overall. So we're looking at extending vRealize operations to give you that visibility throughout the application stack. So talking to the application side, we make several management packs, for example, around database workloads, so Oracle database or perhaps as SAP, whatever it is. And then also we have extensions that bring into VROps things like Azure and Amazon RDS, and all the way down to the infrastructure layer. So we're talking about servers and SANs, and you're able to get that full stack view all the way through it. In my mind, I've been doing this for almost a decade now in the enterprise monitoring space. VROps is one of the best tools out there, especially in terms of VMware and virtualization monitoring, and we're just bringing more and more objects in natively. So you have basically one tool where you can see everything together. And that's what we're going to be showing off here soon. So what does this look like from a product bundle perspective within we call it our True Visibility Suite? You can see today we have several different categories, virtualization, database, storage, network, and then enterprise apps. And one of the things actually missing on here, we just announced a Docker management pack. And from the product management side, we're looking to extend out our cloud monitoring offerings and DevOps monitorings and things, for example, like Pivotal Cloud Foundry and adding more and more functionality. So the idea is that our monitoring and what we're looking at is moving along with a lot of the overall industry trends. So let's go ahead and dive in and have some real examples and what this actually means and get to see all this stuff in action. So first off, we'll talk about demo configuration because it really applies to what a lot of you folks have currently within your infrastructure or maybe looking at overall. So this is VROps 6.6. We have a variety of databases. For the on-prem, the ESXi-based infrastructure, we have Cisco UCS and NetApp, but those could be EMC or Nimble or anything else too. It's the exact same lessons that apply there. And then on the public cloud side, we're looking at RDS, a lot of things hosted on Amazon EC2 and Aurora DB, which is Amazon's database engine. So here's what that looks like, and this is maybe a typical deployment that you may be considering yourself. So if you want to first look at the bottom, we have our VMware data center that is currently on-prem. We have a web server stack and a variety of databases. And then we have these VPCs. These are our network availability zones running on Amazon. That's what you're seeing at the top there. On the upper left-hand side, you'll see the Virginia region, and that's where the primary production databases live with the different web servers. And we actually have a backup site in the Oregon region. But that backup site could also be APAC or Europe or anywhere else too. And this is one of the advantages is that scaling and moving of data. And that's what the hybrid cloud really offers there. Okay, so the first cloud migration challenge, we call this house cleaning. So before you can really look at the overall strategy of moving your data from on-prem to off-prem, you really need to categorize and understand what is currently there. So just like if you're moving in real life, you need to clean up your house before you move. We're going to be doing that same exercise here. I'm saying everybody in IT as we're looking at hybrid cloud overall. When you're doing that exercise, you need to categorize your workloads and understand what's a good candidate for moving and why. So understanding, is it a database? Where does it need to live? Where does it need to connect? Perhaps a web server has to be in different areas of the world to be responsive to your customers. Whatever that is, now is the time to start thinking about that and writing down those questions as you're going through and really taking a good inventory of where infrastructure is and where it's moving. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to a brief demo here. We're going to talk about VROps and take a look at what this actually looks like in practice. Okay, good. So this is a VROps 6.6 system. Went to environment and then to applications. And what I'm showing you is a lot of what are considered to be day two operations within VROps. And if you look that up, there's a lot of great blog posts that I know John has done and several others on the CMBU team. And what we've done here is we've broken down what the applications are themselves into the various components. So you can define these within VROps, and you can define data centers and groups as well. But where I find this very useful is you can break down all the different tiers of your traditional 3-2-1 stack. So you have the web servers in EC2, you got some databases here, table spaces, and unique to the hybrid cloud environment is the Western region, the replica. So now you're able to also see the replicated data in your backup site right next to what you're seeing for your primary. And then right next to it, you're seeing what is currently VMware hosted as well. So you can see the on-prem and what is in the cloud side by side within VROps itself. And the value in all this is now you're able to do that full end-to-end monitoring because you have it all categorized here. Everything's cleaned up. It's nice. So within VROps itself, there's a great default dashboard in 6.6. John and his team have been doing a lot of great work on this. Actually, John, you want to speak to the capacity overview?
Yeah, so the capacity overview is what we've done actually, just to back up a little bit about 6.6, is we really try to simplify the visualizations in the product as much as possible and give you guided and guidance on where you need to look for particular problems. So we have categories, we have overview dashboards for each of the categories for performance troubleshooting and capacity. And the capacity dashboard is just a quick, bird's eye view of the entire environment and your ability to understand, what's being consumed, what you have available, trending information and projections based on the usage that you have in the environment, so you can plan accordingly, so you don't run into situations where you hit a ceiling and you're scrambling to provide additional resources. And also things like reclamation opportunities. I have idle workloads, powered off workloads maybe that are consuming storage or expensive storage tiers, and I can address that and run my environment more efficiently by doing that.
Yep. Excellent. Now this is an example of that, the CPU capacity utilization trend, so you can see where things are going overall. So we're looking at costing, and if you are trying to move to cloud and evaluate, you can see what you have here.
Right.
The other piece of this I really like is this great utilization widget. And this actually ties in with all of the Blue Medora management packs as well. So what you're getting out of the box is a lot of this information on the data store. So you're seeing how the data stores are used. You're also seeing information on the host system, so things that are traditionally within VROps. And from the Blue Medora side, are bringing other objects, for example, on your NetApp volumes, where it says 146 gigs configured, and it should be 100 gigs because you're not really using this. The other piece of this, we can start diving into the VMs themselves, and where it gets very interesting is even into the actual workload size. So here we have several underutilized Microsoft SQL databases where they're configured to 50 gig, where these should only be just a handful of megabytes. So potential waste here, and this is where you really need to clean up house when you're looking to move to that hybrid cloud.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other theme of this is vRealize Business.
Yeah, so vRealize Business for Cloud, that mentioned earlier, is another part of the vRealize suite that you can install alongside vRealize Operations, but the two really work together. So one of the things that you get is visibility, as I mentioned, into private cloud costs. So you can finally answer that question of how much does it cost to run a VM in our environment. And then you can go down, if you're in a hybrid model, you can also track your public cloud consumption and charges as well. So you can see how you're trending there, what those costs are, and you can start to do some comparative analysis between the two. So just flipping through a couple of the dashboards or visualizations that are available there. I would really recommend, if you haven't made it down to Hands-On Labs yet, these products are available in the HOL, so you can test drive and try them out and see what this actually looks like in person. But one thing that we have built into this version is under the reporting section. Let me click on that. Under the reporting section, we have this hybrid cloud assessment that you can run once you install the product. Right away you can run this. And it'll give you private cloud costing, comparative, not only how much your private cloud is costing. Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is an example of the report. Not only how much your private cloud is costing, but what your relative cost is for moving those workloads that are running in private cloud onto public cloud. So you can see, for example, we have our total cost of ownership for the private cloud. Now that includes everything that's deployed to support workloads. It's the difference between what is provisioned on that workload, and we'll get into that and what the individual VM costs are and so forth. But if you were to compare moving your entire virtual infrastructure into the cloud you can see the comparative cost for doing that. And further down, it gives you breakdowns into what your private cloud expenses are based on the data center. So you can see your most expensive data centers, your least expensive data centers, and then you can also view that by the population. So I like this from a comparative standpoint because I can see if I have data centers right here that are more efficient than others. So you can see like Palo Alto and Bengaluru, I'm never sure how to pronounce that, but you can see those are the most expensive data centers that we have out there, and they're also the most populous. But if you notice, Akash data center, the third one on the population list with 33 VMs, is relatively less expensive. So there are a lot of different reasons for that, but right away you can start to see that you have some data centers that are operating more efficiently than others. So it's one thing to look at it at the broad scale and say, yeah, we're cheaper, but where can we on our on-prem data centers, where can we get better? And one thing we do, the next thing we do is break this down by VM profiles. So we'll show you that VM population and the average VM profile for a data center, and then we'll tell you what the cost is on a monthly basis for that VM, for that average size VM in the environment. So you'll notice things like in the Palo Alto data center, for example, you have VMs that are relatively small sized and their operational cost is around $15 a month. Akash, which is our least costly or a lower cost data center overall, you can see that the monthly cost is lower, but they're running larger workloads. Now, hang on to that thought, or I'd like to dig in deeper to that thought just a little bit. This starts to tell you which workloads may be better from a cost standpoint running in public cloud versus another, versus running on premises. So, for example, if I were to move workloads to public cloud, I can see that my larger workloads are actually more efficient to be running on private cloud from a cost standpoint. And then the next section that we have is really what I like to refer to as turning the tables on the business. IT very often gets a black eye or gets, pinned with, hey, you guys are a cost center, you're expensive, you need to cut costs. Things are cheaper in the public cloud, you need to be more efficient. So what we can do with this report, this analysis, is we can kind of turn that discussion into, okay, yeah, but help me help you, business leaders, and you can show them what their cost is, what their contribution is, what the drivers are from a business standpoint. So we break this down by business units, and you can do things like have a discussion, for example, that, hey, business unit A is one of the most costly, it accounts for the lion's share of the cost. What do they do for the company? What is their return to the bottom line? What is their ROI? And so right there, you kind of taken the heat off of IT and transferred it to, rightly so, the business units that are consuming that. And then we break it down by VM. What is the average size VM for this business unit? So it's not all, finger pointing. You'll notice up here we have the trending information where we can show, hey, if you want to improve efficiency, we'll help you do that. IT can help you do that. And we can also give a report card to show how much better you've been getting over time. So these red arrows, will start to trend green as they get more efficient with their costing. And then finally, cost savings opportunities that go hand in hand with that previous section where I can show you at a business unit level, hey, vRealize Operations, and this is where that integration takes place. vRealize Operations has identified idle workloads, powered off workloads, snapshots, all these kind of waste contributors. And we are putting a price tag on that and saying, if you allow us to work with you to reclaim some of this unused capacity, this is the savings that we can achieve in our private cloud. So what I like about this is a former virtual administrator, a lot of times they'd come to me and say, hey, we need to reduce our costs. And I'm like, great, these VMs aren't doing anything, can we get rid of them? Well, nobody wanted to get rid of them because I couldn't, right? So this is a classic problem. Now that I have this costing information, I can really say, you know, to the business leaders, I need your help. You know, help me help you again, type thing. And then the last section of the report is that overall, you know, basically a repeat of the first page of the slide showing that cost. But you're not going to move your entire workload to the cloud. That's, you know, why we have hybrid cloud. So this last section really gives a high-level analysis. You know, it's not something that you can use as an action plan, but it's the beginning of a framework of what workloads or business units or applications would be better served from a cost standpoint by moving into the cloud. So we give you that comparative information there as well, so you can see in our top two data centers, Palo Alto and Bengaluru, those smaller VMs from a cost standpoint, it's not going to cost a lot more to run those in the cloud. And even if we drive more efficiency with those by resizing those workloads, doing some of that cleanup, that house cleaning before we move them, we can even drive that cost lower. Akash, on the other hand, with those larger workloads, it definitely makes sense to keep those. We can run those more efficiently from a cost perspective in our private cloud. So, Greg?
Sounds good. Excellent. Right. So we'll switch back over and take a look at some other challenges. Okay, so this is the big one, multi-cloud production workloads. First off, does that concept seem scary to anybody, as if there's a lot of new tooling and things that you guys have to learn? Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about it myself, right? So before I start digging into this. So IT's still responsible. That's what I wanted to bold and highlight there. They're still going after you if that line of business app goes down. IT's still responsible for it. It doesn't matter where that lives. So when you're evaluating a successful cloud migration, you really have to test. You're going to have a lot of questions, and if it starts to go wrong, people are going to ask, why is this slow? And the first thing they're going to look at is, hey, we just changed something and have a new hybrid cloud strategy, right? And then what you really don't want to hear, and it's classic, our QA guys hate this, is when you say, did you even test it? You never want to see that. So with that, what can you do here? What I advise is mirroring a lot of your databases, either within one location, on-prem versus off-prem, and really doing a lot of synthetic testing wherever possible, so creating user sessions. We use TPCC and OLTP, and these are different benchmarking suites for internally. And really what you're looking to do here is you're looking at the exact same KPIs. So CPU, latency, throughput, all that stuff matters. It doesn't matter where your data actually lives. So you're looking at it as if it's just this exact same data workload just lives somewhere else. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at what that means on the VROps side of the house. So actually, this is a bit of a two-part demo. So first off, I'm going to start off with this Amazon RDS instance analysis. This is an out-of-the-box dashboard from the Blumedora RDS Manager Pack. And what's great about this is I can demonstrate it's the exact same KPIs. So CPU utilization, IOPS, latency, throughput. This is the exact same stuff you guys care about today when you're trying to troubleshoot if a database is running slow, right? It's the exact same stuff. So when I'm looking at this, what this is telling me is that we have a lot of IOPS going. You know, these things are sized by disk allocation and colored in intensity based on what kind of throughput you have overall. So when I select our Microsoft SQL system running on Amazon's relational database service, I have a lot of good properties. And this is where these things get a little bit unique running on the cloud, is you have these different t-shirt sizing. So this is a T2 medium size. That's what you're going to get billed on, really, and how much room you have to grow from a capacity standpoint. Availability zones are now a thing. You know, where does your data actually live? And the one thing I think is most concerning, it should be at least to all the manager types, is what the license model is when you bought it. Because if you are putting a production data on an Oracle system or SQL system with the bring your own license, and you don't have that license, now you're automatically in violation. So this is where you need to understand a few intricacies of the cloud overall. But this is where it remains the same, right? We're still looking at different I operations, disk read write, look at database connections. And this is a bit unique, you know, moving to that OpEx model, is what is your CPU credit usage? And this is what you're getting billed on. So when we're looking to dive in deeper, double click on one of these objects. I'm going to go to all metrics. And this is kind of cool where you get to see the object relationship. So within VROps, it's got this great engine for relating different objects together and showing what is dependent within your infrastructure. And since we're looking at the infrastructure of this particular Microsoft SQL workload, we're going to go ahead and take a look at disk. And I always like to look at disk queue depth. If there is something in the disk queue, that means that it's not being serviced fast enough and therefore it's running slowly. But we also want to compare what that means on the database side. So we jump over to this yellow can, which is a database. It's provided by the Blumenauer Microsoft SQL Management Pack, but it's the same one that runs on-prem or off-prem. It doesn't matter. It's still Microsoft SQL. And we'll go to metrics here, and we'll look at connections. And here we go, user connections. And we can see, go minimize this here. We have, during that disk queue depth spike over here, we had a high number of connections. Perhaps it's even maxing out the number of connections. I know this is because we're doing a little bit of load testing, but we can evaluate here, is this going to satisfy what our production requirements are? And I would say not, because when I look over to lock weights and deadlocks, we have just a lot of poor performance on this side, so a lot of deadlocks within the database, and that's starting to spike out and trend. So again, exact same type of depth of monitoring that you need on-prem and off-prem, but you can use tools like VROps to really view your data within both locations. So another example along the similar theme is this is a MySQL. We have an on-prem version, which is the one I've highlighted here, and then we also have one running on RDS. And what we're doing is we're looking at the slowest queries as we're running the exact same load generation tool, both on-prem and off-prem. And what I like to do is look at the heat map. So here we have just a lot of red and yellow, so it doesn't look great, right? And this is our on-prem version. And within our current infrastructure, the average time, the worst query is 18 seconds. And even like the sixth worst query, for example, it's 14 seconds. So not looking great for our current infrastructure. Right? This would be a lot of outage. And that exact same workload running on RDS, click on this, now our average time is 2 seconds. So again, this is important. We need to load gen, exact same load within both locations to really understand if you're able to successfully migrate back and forth.
So now you're really getting all the data points that you need to make an intelligent decision about moving workloads. We have the costing information, we have performance, kind of what if situation. So it really gives you the total package.
Definitely. So the other challenge, SLAs and availability of data. So SLAs just got really complicated within the hybrid cloud world. You and IT have SLAs to all the other business units, right? You got to maintain that uptime. People are going to go after you if it's down. It's not good. You now, with all your different cloud providers, whether it's a vCAN provider or Amazon or whoever else, Rackspace, doesn't matter, they have SLAs to you. So how do you really rectify both of those situations and ensure that everything is operational? And I'm going to show you a tactical example here. It's at the bottom of the screen. There was a huge outage with Amazon back in January, February, where the US East data center totally went down, brought down like Slack and Twitter and all kinds of other folks. So how do you also deal with that? Because now you're not in control anymore. You're not the guy that can just run to the server room and start unplugging things when it goes haywire. So you need a tool that can also monitor a lot of things along those lines. So we're going to take a look at the availability dashboard within VROps. Okay. Review, go to all dashboards. Yeah, bear with me a second.
There you go. Should be under operations.
The realize operations?
No, just operations. I think you had it on the other tab up there. There you go.
Open. Oh, this is operations overview.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, I'm going to jump over to our scenario-based one here. So this is looking at you're using several different management packs and some very unique widgets within VROps itself. We're using the Geo widget, and what we've done here is we've actually defined where the different data centers actually live, and we're looking at health. So US East is everything that is RDS hosted, Amazon hosted. We have a private cloud based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then we have a replica over here in US West. We're also using the health widget, which is pretty cool, the health weather map. As it scrolls along and as things change overall in trend, you can just get a good visualization of that. So if things start to go more yellow and more red in real time, you could understand what's going on there. The other thing we're looking at too is within the US East anomalies. So as the anomalies come up, the different spikes within data, we can start to see that something is going down overall. So giving us kind of a high-level holistic alert on really what our health is.
Yeah, and this is an important visualization, and one of the key capabilities of VRealize Operations, and Blue Door does a great job of taking advantage of that. A lot of customers suffer from alert fatigue, and that's why a lot of operational tools just end up being shelfware or not really effective or used. And this concept of anomalies, we're baselining behavior within a given environment, and so we understand when things are we filter out the baseline noise, and we just let you know when that noise level increases to a certain volume that, hey, now's maybe a good time to start looking at those alerts and figuring out what's going on.
Yep, exactly. So the other great dashboard around this area is this operations overview dashboard.
Yeah, so this is a great a dashboard to have at a knock display, or maybe even an IT manager or director of IT or something, to just get an overall visibility of what do things look like in my environment, how much capacity do I have, how many VMs are running in the environment, so forth. And then you can look at things like that alert volume for a given data center. So the top bar actually shows you overall within your environment, and then you can select from various data centers on the selection bar there to the left-hand side and get specific detail about individual environments within your data center. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for driving there. And what that shows you is, the overall health of that environment on a trending timeline, so you can see where you may have had bumps in the road in terms of increased alert activity and so forth. And then we'll show you like the top consumers within each of those environments, top VMs for contention for CPU, memory, and disk latency. So you maybe know where to start looking if things are starting to run off the rails, or you can actually use this preferably to be more proactive and say, this is a list that our NOC personnel maybe, or our Tier 1 personnel can start looking into. We're not getting complaints yet, but let's kind of figure out what's going on before it becomes a larger problem.
So what's interesting, this is actually Bloomador's live environment. I'm logged in over VPN, and it looks like our data center one's experiencing some real issues. So our IT guys are being slammed right now because we have so much demo stuff going on with VMworld. And you can see alert volume spiking up on the left-hand side, where leading up to VMworld, we had a lot of contention, a lot of real issues. And we started to fix things as it went, but our uptime, it's not great here, guys. So this is just a real-world example of how we're using this today currently. And this is an out-of-the-box dashboard. John and the rest of the team did a great job designing these things, and they're just ready to go.
Yeah, and my favorite is this alert volume, and you'll see this on a lot of the dashboards that we have. And again, what we want to do is draw your focus away from it kind of not being able to see the forest for the trees type approach. And looking at that volume lets you know whether or not you have just general noise going on, or if things are starting to get really hot, we need to take a look at what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Oops. Switching this back over. Okay, so resources. So how is this going to apply to you? And hopefully you guys are able to get some good takeaways out of the room here and able to continue this line of thinking at home. So first off, I've talked to a few of you guys earlier on today, but you can experience everything that we saw here today for yourself. So if you go to go.bloomador.com/hybridcloud, the VROP system that I was using here, this historic mode system, is actually hosted on Amazon. And we just ask for your name and email address, hit go, and you can log in and just go ahead and have at it. It's basically running in a read-only mode and just running the same data over and over again with all the customized dashboards. So definitely feel free to work on that. There's also, if you go to the URL, there is a copy of the slides out of the presentation as well, and could follow up on that side.
Yeah, and so that hybrid cloud assessment report that I talked about earlier, you can try that out for free. You can test drive VRealize Business for Cloud in your own environment. Whether or not you're running VRealize Operations, it's not required, but the two do integrate. There is definitely synergy if you have both of those products running together. So you can go to the link there to sign up and be able to download, get trial keys, and then install and run that report.
Mm-hmm. The resource we want to highlight is the VROps webinar series. Sunny Dua, Ewan, and Simon Eady do a great job with this series. It's really one of the best training tools I've ever seen for VROps. There's a great one they did recently, What's New in VROps 6.6. So a lot of those dashboards we talked about are highlighted.
Right, yeah. So definitely, I don't know, for folks that are on VROps or running VROps in an environment, have you upgraded to 6.6 yet? Has anyone got one back there? It's really, I don't normally like push people to, upgrade because, having been in IT, I understand the pain involved with doing upgrades just from a procedural policy standpoint. But you really want to try to upgrade. I don't understand, sir, if you don't mind, I can ask you, massive difference between previous versions and this version, would you say?
It was a lot faster and it was more processed from my company's perspective of getting an upgrade than the upgrade actually took.
Okay, yeah. So we've improved that process as well. It does use our new HTML5 UI, so snappier response. For a lot of the dashboards and things like that. So thank you for allowing me to pick on you there.
The other thing I wanted to mention, there is a part of this webinar series. I guest hosted one myself and Brock Peterson, one of our SAs, where we just had a full deep dive, really about full stack monitoring and a little bit of hybrid cloud as well. So feel free to check that out. It's about an hour and a half long where we dive into this a little bit deeper. So finally, a little bit of a marketing plug here. So check us out at booth 106. You guys have a chance to win your motorcycle.
That thing is cool.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, I'd be happy to further the conversation there too as well. And again, just come by, check it out, and see what we have to offer there. So with that, if you guys have any questions?
Can you fire up the mic for the Q&A?
If you just want to ask, just speak loud. Yeah, we're a small group.
Yeah.
Amongst friends.
Okay.
Totally hypothetical situation. I'm asking for a friend, I swear. CTO is in charge of the development group, wants to push a whole bunch of stuff onto Azure. We checked out the VMworld business and the hybrid cloud assessment, but it really, from my understanding, only takes into account moving VMs, into IaaS. But they would consider more pushing into PaaS, like Azure websites and stuff to run IaaS workloads and such. Is there any good way to try to do cost analysis on PaaS stuff?
Yeah, you're going to see us improve this that assessment over time. So yeah, today it's very focused on, hey, what if you move VMs into Azure or AWS? So that is something that is coming. Again, remember my disclaimer at the beginning, but we are going to add a lot more usability to that report. Another thing you can do with vRealize Business for Cloud, if you're still under the trial period, is if you have workloads running out there today, you can actually monitor what those costs are. So you can link your Azure account, and we'll start reporting on what your utilization is, your consumption, and what the cost associated with that is. So another way to kind of approach it.
Excellent question. Are there any others?
Frankly, I didn't read every word of the doco, but I was a little confused with the vRealize Business standalone.
Okay.
Very limited functionality versus the full functionality that you have to plug into VRA and VROps and everything else.
Yeah, right. So the standalone basically gives you that cost visibility for your private cloud, and then whatever public clouds you link into. When you integrate it with vRealize Operations, what it'll do is pull that usage trending information, reclaimable capacity information, to give you cost savings opportunities. We make recommendations in VROps about, hey, this workload can be resized, or these VMs, are not, active, they're idle workloads. But with that integration, we say, and if you do something about it, this is what you could save. The VRA integration allows you to associate your private cloud cost with any deployment blueprints you have. So when people go to the catalog to deploy new VMs, they get a very accurate cost information about what that VM is going to cost for the duration of the lease period based on how they size the workload and things like that. So you can get a lot of benefit from standalone. The only recommendation I would have is definitely think about using it with VR Ops to get that more powerful or enable that discussion with the business. Like I said, to turn the tables and say, this is our cost, but by the way, this is your share of the cost, and that can help with that piece.
Excellent. Any more questions?
That's a great question. So the private cloud cost is based on a set of data that we get from various sources. So for hardware and software information, we're using published rates from the various hardware manufacturers. So we'll actually even identify through through the vCenter API. We'll identify, okay, this is a Hewlett-Packard, whatever model server or UCS, whatever the a particular hardware is, and then we'll go out and we'll look up, and this is what it costs. You can adjust that. We do the same thing on software, so we know these are Windows VMs, running Windows 2012, Server 2012. We can go and look up from Microsoft what the cost is associated with that. Same thing for Red Hat, et cetera, et cetera. And we even apply that to the cloud comparison. So we know, for example, that Windows servers are cheaper to run in Azure than they are, in AWS, for example. So we'll apply that as well. So it's based on, published rates. The things like we also include cost for labor, the soft costs or the hidden costs, and those are actually based on survey data from actual customers. It's done by a third party, not by us. So it's independently done, and so it's a good baseline of information to give you right out of the box very quickly. This is what a VM costs to run in your environment, but you can certainly go in and tweak those numbers and add additional costs if you want. You have in a particular tier or a particular class of a service, there's additional costs associated with that. You can add that in to the model as well.
So just showing an example of that, this is looking at what it looks like within our current data center at Blue. We have licensing breakdown, hardware costs. What I love about this is it actually knows the age of the hardware as well.
Yeah.
So it'll say, hey, you got a bunch of servers from 2012. They're starting to age out here, but the overall operational cost is pretty low on those units. And we'll actually start to break some of that information down. So there we go. Looks like we got a lot of older systems here. Potential upgrades, 2013 or older. So while we're kind of wrapping some things up here, I just want to show you what that looks like. They go to bluemodora.com, that hybrid cloud page. Get the slides and then log in, the login side to try everything out on your own. Just fill in some basic information. And I'll actually do that live here. And what we'll do is it will automatically log you in to our demo environment. It says download now. Please ignore the download nomenclature. And we did a little bit of scripting work in the back end. And this is Exxon. So this is actually one of our biggest hybrid cloud use cases is demo environments. We have multiple VROps systems running in this demo mode that are load balanced across several different VPCs and availability zones. So we're also dogfooding all this stuff ourselves and really using it. And everything we showed you is right here.
Anyone wanted, and I highly recommend, if you want to take a look at this stuff, this is the easiest way to consume it. But Craig, how would someone, customers already running VROps in their environment and they want to try some of this stuff out, how would they go about doing that?
Sure, we have several trials. Just engage, go to our website, or you can even talk to me afterwards and we can talk about it. But we have a trial license for our suite of products. And you could try, we have nearly 50 management packs and just try them out. I think it's the best way to really evaluate from there. So final bit of housekeeping. There is a survey, so please fill that out. It means a lot to John and myself, so we get to speak next year. And definitely like to hear what kind of feedback you guys have on this session. Thank you.
Thanks.